We are down to the final four. Welcome to another college football preview show here on the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton and Wasserman here, previewing the college football playoff semifinals between Penn State and Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl and Texas versus Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Dalton, I can't believe we only have 3 games left in the college football season. It feels like it's flown by, honestly, but we got 3 games left. We're down to the final 4 teams.
The season of chaos, and I think we got a very deserving final 4 teams. You could make the argument these are the best 4 teams in the country, and I think we're going to see 2 fantastic games between 2 teams with an absolute boatload of talent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So just to remind people, the records going into the college football playoff semifinals for the 2 of us, you are 78-42 on the year. I am 76-44. on the year. So I'm down by 2 games against you with only 3 games left. So maybe I can make up some ground here. We'll see if we differ on any of these games. I'm just going to put out right now, I will be making my actual predictions. I'm not going to go against you just to try to make up ground. I will be going with my actual predictions, so we'll see if we actually differ on any of these games today.
And I remember counting it up last year, and I think I had you by about 6 or 7. So you pulled it in a little bit tighter this year. You still have time. You still have time.
You're such an asshole. Yes. Yeah. So I'm 2 games back now. Yeah, progress. I'm getting better.
Maybe next year you get over the hump there.
Just to remind everyone, obviously we're going to go over a lot of advanced numbers and advanced metrics today. If you're wondering where you can get some of those advanced numbers and metrics, you can get them at PFF.com. Get a PFF Plus subscription today. Get, like I said, access to all those numbers for every player and team in college football and the NFL, and you get access to our full mock draft simulator. You can draft a full 7 rounds for your favorite team or all 32 NFL teams, trade players, trade picks, best fantasy tools on the planet. I know kind of fantasy season is over right now, but for next year, get ahead of the game as well there, and the best betting tools on the planet as well. I know a lot of you, including me and Dalton, are going to be betting a lot during the NFL playoffs as well, so make sure you guys get access to all of that with the PFF Plus subscription today. All right, Dalton. First game we're talking about today, a game I will be going to, number 6 Penn State against number 7 Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl down in Miami. I cannot wait for this. One of these 2 teams will be going on to the national championship game. Really cool stat I found that Marcus Freeman and James Franklin are coaching against each other. It's guaranteed to be the first time ever that a black coach will be in the national title game, which I think is a really, really cool stat. You have the Penn State run game against the Notre Dame run defense. What should be looking out for when they have the ball?
So I think in general, what Andy Kotelnicki has done since they lost to Ohio State in Week 10. You always have options when you're struggling to run the ball, and they really struggled to do anything in that game. They only scored 6 offensive points, and I think he's always trying to find a new wrinkle, right? Whether it's motions and messing around with formations or trick plays, but it feels like down the stretch here, not that a lot of that's gone away. We still see Tyler Warren at quarterback. We still see all the crazy, shifting formations and all of that. But I think there's an element where he's just decided this offense is going to be heavier. We're going to lean even more into 12 personnel, more into Tyler Warren's skill set, and more into the tight ends. And, through that Ohio State game, they were 25th in their usage rate of 12 personnel, which is obviously pretty high, right? We're talking about well above average, 25th out of 130-something teams. Down the stretch since then, since Week 11, 3rd highest rate of 12 personnel in the country. This is all their plays, not just run plays. 58% of their plays now are in 12 personnel, and I think the more I was watching their last 5-6 games, I think not only Tyler Warren and everything he can do, and we know everything's centered around him, right? Obviously getting him touches in the passing game, playing wildcat quarterback, getting him yards after catch opportunities, but I think their second tight end, Khalil Dinkins, has at number 16, he's been playing really well as far as being that blocking tight end that can allow Tyler Warren to move around so much. But you talk about in 12 personnel lately, 5.7 yards per carry. 26 explosive runs and 14 touchdowns since Week 11 out of 12 personnel. Both of those numbers lead the nation. So you're talking about, and I think the schemes even have been tilting a little bit more. You talked about last week how they've been mostly split for the season between outside zone and those duo schemes, getting right downhill, especially out of the pistol. They've leaned more into lately those outside zone schemes. It looks a lot of times, especially with both tight ends, even when they're in 2x2, but with 2 tight ends and 2 receivers, it looks a little more like some Kyle Shanahan sort of schemes, and all the motion and all of that's thrown in there. And their backs just look more comfortable making that one cut and getting downhill and stretching the defense horizontally, right? And I think they do get back to the duo and man schemes and the counter schemes downhill in the pistol too, but I think they're starting to work off of the zone. The offensive line has just straight up been blocking better. I can just tell you that right now. They're just blocking better the second half. They've gotten more in tune with what they want to do, but I think it's very difficult, no matter who you are, to defend Penn State because you never know where Tyler Warren is. When Warren's in line, he is a fantastic blocker along with Khalil Dinkins. I think it's these sets that it's tough. It's just tough to match up with, right? And I know we talk about all the time, well, Penn State struggles when it comes to their wide receivers, right? And so many teams now sit in 11 and even 10 personnel, but you go, okay, then just put less of them on the field, and they're not as big a problem. And we have matchup issues for defenses inside. The weird part is Notre Dame, they've seen the 5th lowest percentage of 12 personnel this season out of any team in college football. So can they handle it? Yes, they're a great defense. They can handle anything. We know they're one of the 4 best. These might actually just be the 4 best defenses in college football, which is crazy.
Defense wins championships, yeah.
I think the actual quote's a little over. He's still got to score points, but I think they handle it? Sure. Have they seen it a ton? No. And I think, you're going to mention the same thing kind of in the passing game is where those 2 tight ends, even Dinkins, the fact that he's such a good blocker on the inside, he can make things happen, and he allows Warren. Because even there's times when Warren will maul people up front, and there's other times when he'll just run out into the flat, and the problem is you have to account for him. This isn't just any normal tight end. If you don't account for Tyler Warren, Aller's just going to pull it, and Warren's going to go 60 yards after the catch on you, right? So I think it's just the fact that Kotelnicki has leaned more into this 12 personnel stresses out not just the run game, but everything that a defense has to account for.
Absolutely. So if any of our viewers are wondering what we mean by 11 personnel, 12 personnel, it doesn't mean you have 12 players in the field, obviously. It means whatever the first number is, so in this case 12 personnel, 1 running back on the field, and the second number, in this case 2 tight ends on the field. Yep. 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, and stuff like that. So if you're wondering just what those numbers mean in terms of personnel, it means the first number is running back, second number is tight ends, how many you have on the field in that one. And Dalton, you talk about the tight ends and how important they are to the run game in this one. It's all about the tight ends in the pass game as well, obviously, for Penn State. So my match to watch is Tyler Warren against the Fighting Irish safeties because the Notre Dame secondary probably has a pretty big advantage over Penn State's wide receivers in this game. Right now, when a wide receiver is targeted, Notre Dame has the 3rd best coverage grade in the Power 4 with a 90.3 mark. Penn State only targets their wide receivers 35% of the time. That's the lowest rate in the Power 4. Only 35% of the time does Drew Aller look to the Penn State wide receivers. Notre Dame runs man coverage one of the highest rates in the country. They run man coverage about 57% of the time. Penn State's receivers have notoriously struggled to gain separation this season. So not a great matchup for Penn State's receivers in this game. But they do have a superstar tight end in Tyler Warren. John Mackey Award winner, leads all Power 4 tight ends in basically everything, right? Receiving grade, 93.3, 1,158 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, 655 yards after the catch. There's a ton more stats, too, that he leads Power 4 tight ends in. He averages over 77 receiving yards per game. No other Penn State pass catcher even hits 50 yards per game. So he is very clearly the number 1 option for Penn State's passing game. Fortunately for Notre Dame, though, they've got excellent safeties who might be up to the task. Notre Dame right now is the 3rd best group of safeties in the country in terms of coverage grade at 91.4. They've allowed only a 46.1 passer rating when a tight end was targeted this year, 2nd among all defenses in the country. Xavier Watts, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, oh, he's going to be the guy match up Tyler Warren. It's actually a lot of Aiden Schuler. Aiden Schuler's been the guy that they match up a lot with tight ends and kind of allows Xavier Watts to be in cover 1, the roaming center fielder at free safety back there. And Schuler has been incredible covering tight ends this year. 89.2 coverage grade, only allowed 50% of targets to be caught against tight ends this year. If Warren is unable to be a superstar like he's been all year, it could be a long night for Penn State's passing game. But the fortunate thing for Penn State is they do have a superstar in Tyler Warren, and that is the ultimate deciding factor, I think, in this one. Because like I said, if he doesn't get going, I really struggle to see how Drew Aller in the passing game is going to get going.
Yeah, and to no surprise at all, Warren is by far their highest-graded receiver against man coverage this year as well. And we've seen teams, we saw Ohio State in person, they went to a heavier man coverage kind of scheme, and they took Warren, away up the seams. and they made him beat him outside, and I think just the entire operation is not designed to throw outside towards the numbers. Harrison Wallace is the next highest graded player against man coverage. He's made 17 catches against it this year, but 10 of them were contested. So to your point about the wide receivers being unable to get separation, I don't even think they got great separation for the most part last week against Boise State, right? Now you're talking about the best man coverage team in the country. Christian Gray's been solid on the outside. Leonard Moore is just spectacular as a true freshman. You mentioned Schuler playing a huge role to leave Watts back there, and Watts will drop down in the box here and there. A lot of times, even in run support now, which a year ago I would have never said. Absolutely not. I would have been like, why is Xavier Watts in run support? Don't do this. This year he's tackling like all hell, but that's what it's going to be. Is Notre Dame, they're not going to change anything they do on defense. I think you're going to get a reasonably high blitz rate, especially with what we saw from Penn State's offensive line last week. They were spectacular when blocking 4 rushers, not as great when blocking blitzes, and that's against Boise State. Notre Dame's going to stay aggressive on defense in this game, and you're right, containing Warren, as always, is the key.
Absolutely. So, Dalton, you have the Notre Dame passing game against Penn State pass defense, which we look for when Riley Leonard is throwing the ball.
I feel like I'm just about to make the same speech you did. Is Penn State, they're a heavy single high team normally. They've leaned even more into it in the playoffs. And now these last 2 games against SMU and Boise, they were feeling very confident about their ability to cover these 2 teams. And I get it. They're more talented. SMU, not the best wide receiving core. Roderick Daniels is okay. They lost R.J. Maryland, who was really their best weapon against it. Boise State, not exactly loaded with receivers. We know what the priority was with against the Broncos. These last 2 games, they're running single high defenses at a 70% clip, which is even higher than during the season. They were in the high 50s. And same thing, cover 1 in these 2 games, 52.5%. And they were generally a pretty high cover 1 team, but that 52.5, you're getting up into like Notre Dame territory, who leads the country in it. So I think, look, first of all, I think Penn State's going to do the exact same thing. They're going to feel confident that our guys can cover theirs, and they don't even have a Tyler Warren. And their passing game, Riley Leonard threw for 90 yards last week, right, against Georgia. Georgia, same thing. For the most part, in man coverage, they were locking it down. Notre Dame wide receivers, I should say, 83rd in the nation in receiving grade. Riley Leonard, when he's faced these defenses, in part because his receivers are not separating downfield and they're not getting balls up the seam. Here he is against single high this year, 61.6 passing grade, 6 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. It's been stagnant. And again, is this all on Leonard? Not necessarily. Notre Dame has the same issues on the outside. They just don't get open. And especially in drop-back situations, you look at the successful plays in this passing game, against some lighter teams. It's been a lot of busted coverages because that's what bad teams do. It's been, Leonard will take off. He's obviously a great athlete and a great scrambler. It's been design rollouts. It's been a good chunk of the screen game, especially with the backs. I think we have the same problem with both teams in this game. They're so similarly built that if they get in obvious passing situations, you have a serious problem. And especially we're assuming Abdul Carter is going to be healthy enough to go.
He keeps posting that Darth Vader picture every day now. Literally every day he posts the same picture.
It scares you, doesn't it? I just think, especially in the passing game, you have 2 teams with the exact same problem going against almost the exact same defense. Tom Allen might mix it up a little more in this game, but I would be tempted to think he's not going to. I think you're going to see both teams in your face, blitzing, press man coverage, who can get open, and at the end of the day, it's just going to get decided by who can run the ball better and who can make just enough throws. But Leonard's been struggling against single high coverages all season, and it's in large part because Notre Dame, like Penn State on the outside, they struggle to separate.
And I think it's really interesting how often Tom Allen blitzes in this game because, like we said a lot, like he is, Riley Leonard, really good against the blitz with an 84.3 PFF grade. When he's not blitzed, 64.8 PFF grade.
It's the 2 different it's the contrast of these 2 quarterbacks for me, that Aller has the rifle of an arm. He's a decent athlete, but he has the rifle of an arm, and we saw it a couple of times last week, even on balls that weren't caught. Very willing and very able to make throws into super tight windows. He just absolutely lets it rip. Whereas Leonard, the one dangerous thing is always when you have a quarterback like Riley Leonard in man coverage, you talk about it all the time, backs are turned, we're one-on-one outside. If we don't have a spy and a good one at that, you better have a really good spy against Riley Leonard. I thought at times Georgia did a good job with it last week with Jalen Walker, but when you have to use a player the caliber of a Jalen Walker, or maybe even an Abdul Carter just to mix it up, or maybe, Kobe King if he can catch him. When you have to use a player of that caliber just as a spy, a guy's really dangerous with his legs. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is keeping Leonard in the pocket, making him beat you from the pocket. Whereas with Aller, you better hold that tight coverage, because he's going to try it. There's no question. If nobody's open, he's still going to try it because he believes he can make every throw.
It's just, like I said, the splits with Riley Leonard are so funny. Like, when he's kept clean, 90 passing grade. When he's not blitzed, 64.8. When he's under pressure, 41.3. When he is blitzed, 84.3.
I think it makes a little bit of sense when you consider their receiving core, the windows.
Yeah.
If they're protected, the windows are just a little more open, right? Especially if you're talking zone blitzes. And I think that's why Tom Allen's going to lean into just the aggression, right? Just like Georgia did. Let's line up. We don't think their receivers are better than us. Okay, we're going to play single high. We got to stop the run. I think they're going to do a lot of the same things that Georgia did last week. Because Georgia, honestly, outside of Riley Leonard in the run game, Georgia played a great defensive game. They were put in a bad spot. We got to remember 7 points was because of the kick return, and the only touchdown they gave up, Notre Dame had to go all of 12 yards for it. Georgia came in with the right plan. They just didn't have enough offense to support it.
Yeah, so I got the Notre Dame run game in this one. It's really about the line of scrimmage, and can the Nittany Lions win the line of scrimmage to make up for any tackling problems that they have? And you illustrated really well last week against Boise State. Penn State has some major issues bringing down ball carriers this year. They missed a tackle on 17% of plays this year, the fourth worst rate in the Power 4. And normally, when you go up against a running back like Ashton Ginty, that'd be a big problem, because Ashton Ginty set the single-season PFF record for most broken tackles in a year by a lot, with 151, breaking Bijan Robinson's record this year. Instead, in that game against Boise State, Penn State held Ashton Ginty to a season-low 104 rushing yards. Ginty still broke 16 tackles in that game, which is the third most of the season for him. The reason why, though, he didn't run wild in the Nittany Lions despite breaking as many tackles, they only allowed 0.6 yards before contact per attempt. Boise State had a season-low 45.4 run blocking grade. Penn State did an amazing job of dominating at the line of scrimmage and then also swarming to the football when Ginty broke a tackle after that. So it's not really a new trend either right now. The Nittany Lions, 15th in the country with only 1.1 yards before contact allowed per attempt. Opponents only have a 40.9 run blocking grade against Penn State this season. Now, Notre Dame's rushing attack is really good both before and after contact, which is why the Fighting Irish are the third most efficient team in the country in terms of EPA per rush this year. Notre Dame leads the Power 4 with 4.2 yards after contact per attempt, and they're seventh in run blocking grade in the Power 4 this year with a 75.9 mark. But they played 4 games against an opponent with a top 25 run defense grade. In those 4 games, they have a 54.8 run blocking grade. So they've dominated against the lesser run defense teams they played this year, but against the really good ones, they have not really blocked that well. And Penn State is one of those top 25 run defenses that we have in college football right now. But Notre Dame, obviously, a three-headed monster in that backfield between Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Riley Leonard, you mentioned as well. In order to avoid getting gashed by Notre Dame's rushing attack, Penn State's got to win at the line of scrimmage and swarm to the football, just like they did last week against Boise State.
Absolutely. Penn State's defense the last 3 weeks has missed 57 tackles.
Yeah.
It's rough. It's rough to keep battling through like that. But like you mentioned, if you win on the first level, it makes it a lot easier. I think what we have seen from Notre Dame's run game, and I think last week against Georgia, or 2 days ago against Georgia, I keep saying last week because I'm used to the week-to-week grind of it. But against Georgia, it reminded me a lot of what they had to do against Louisville, who also has a very good run defense earlier this year. Riley Leonard is the equalizer, right? If nothing else, in tough spots, you create a different numbers game in the run game when it's a design quarterback run, or even when you have the option game going, right? So I think that could play if they're struggling early, like they did against Georgia, especially to run between the tackles again, and they are losing that battle on the first level to, Amin Vanover and Abdul Carter and Zane Durant, those guys who played really well. Carter didn't play as much last week, but those guys who played really well up front for Penn State last week, then you have a situation where we go, is it going to be again where Riley Leonard needs 14, 15-plus carries just to keep moving the chains, right? Because that's what it came down to. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price last week combined for 56 yards. Notre Dame isn't going to win a ton of games when they're running the ball like that, but Riley Leonard was their leading rusher. He made enough plays. And then eventually Mike Denbrock got a little creative with some jet sweeps and things. But Leonard's the equalizer. And if you then contain Leonard and you just score enough points, because what you're worried about the most is Love and Price with the home runs.
Yeah.
That's what you're worried. The 98-yard touchdown.
Especially Love, yeah.
Right, especially with Love, who's just an absolute burner. You can't let him bounce outside. Just like Ginty. I mean, it's all the same. I don't think anything changes from last week against Boise State where you go, you're right, we have to swarm to the football. We have to make tackles, and if they break outside, they can take off on us, right?
Yeah.
So, I look for early on, don't let them pop a big one, swarm to the ball, and then we see if once again they have to rely on Riley Leonard to just pretty much just be the battering ram at this point, because that's what it had to be against Georgia last week. It was not a great offensive performance against Georgia last week. Understandably, it's Kirby Smart. That stadium kind of sounded like a home game for Georgia. You still have all the pressure of trying to beat the SEC in Georgia and a team that's won 2 national titles recently. So I'm not going to blame them, but it's going to have to be better in this game. If Love and Price only run for 56 yards in this game, I feel like they're going to lose.
Yeah.
That's just because you're not going to win a ton of games with your 2 big guys running the ball like that.
And I know there's a lot of people out there saying, well, listen, they handled Ashton Ginty. Why can't they handle Notre Dame? I actually think this is a more difficult offense to handle in terms of the ground game than Ashton Ginty, because you have 3 guys to worry about. And the offensive line is a lot better than Boise State's as well. So that's another big thing. And like you said, the equalizer is Riley Leonard. Maddox Madsen can run. You gotta account for that, but you're not like scared of it that much. Like when you have Notre Dame, you don't know who has the football, so it makes it more difficult for Penn State. No, they knew, hey, straight up, just get Ashton Ginty. That's all we got to worry about. With Notre Dame, you got to worry about like multiple guys that could have the football and running the ball in this game. So it's harder to swarm to the football when you don't know who has the football, right? Yeah. So that's another thing too, and why I think Notre Dame is more difficult to contain than Boise State's rushing attack. We'll see how Penn State does, though. I do think Penn State, like I said, Notre Dame's offensive line against really good run defenses has not played that well this year. So that could be a big part in this one. Ultimately, Dalton, who will win the Orange Bowl and move on to the national championship game? Are you going to break my heart here and say Notre Dame, or will Penn State pull it off?
This is tough. This is as 50-50 a game, I think, as you could possibly have. And not only the relatively equal levels of talent between the 2 teams, but 2 teams that stylistically are just about the same.
Yeah.
I think if there's any difference, I think Notre Dame's secondary is a little bit better. I mean, just how good they are in man coverage. I think Love and Price are a little bit more home run threats than Allen and Singleton. And Katron Allen lately has been spectacular right up front. And I don't think Love and Price are only running for 56 yards again, right? And I think that combined with the fact of how good Notre Dame is in man coverage, and we talk about even small details like special teams could come into play here again. I'm going to take Notre Dame 23-20. I think it's going to be very even this game. Just like last week's game against Georgia, I think it's very much going to be played on the margins. Who makes that first big mistake to put them behind? Because I think scoring early, getting ahead in this game is going to be at a big premium with as much as these 2 teams struggle to drop back and throw the football outside. Now, Penn State has a better shot to come back in that scenario with Aller and with Warren, but I think Notre Dame is very, very comfortable playing these types of games. I don't think Love and Price are only running for 56 yards again. Penn State got to tackle. You have to tackle. You have to finish plays. They did finish plays last week, but you mentioned it. This is a tougher task with 3 legitimate home run threats with as ball carriers, a better offensive line, and I just think a team that's so embraces the way that they want to win, they're fine with it. They did it against Texas A&M at A&M. They did it against Louisville. They did it against Georgia. I mean, they did it against Indiana. They just keep grinding away at you and shutting you down on defense. And I think if Aller and Warren don't have an absolutely special day, I would lean in on the Irish. I'm going Notre Dame 23-20.
All right. So you're taking Anthony Tresh, who's also the great equalizer as well.
That's the smart move. That's an equalizer right there. There's going to be a 4th down. There's going to be a big 4th down that makes you nervous, and you know why you're going to be nervous. He was
going viral on Twitter the last couple of days because like, who the heck is this guy back there that's Marcus Freeman's ears? Like, that's great Anthony Tresh for PFF great.
I will tell you right now, because I didn't get very many of them. When you get that head nod from your head coach, you're doing something right.
Yep. Yeah, he's got the ear of Marcus Freeman, and he should, because he is brilliant. So Anthony Tresh, shout out to him, former PFF great, now the director of analytics with Notre Dame football. Unfortunately for Anthony Tresh, though, I am picking Penn State. I got Penn State 21-20 this game. I think you nailed it. This game's going to be a rock fight. These are 2 teams that want to play football the exact same way. dominant defenses, and then both offenses, I think, are going to try to establish a run a lot in this game. But the difference is for me, when each team, and at some point it's going to happen, when you need a quarterback to make a big-time throw, I trust Drew Aller a lot more than I trust Riley Leonard to do that in this game. So I got the Nittany Lions winning this game and Penn State advancing to their first national title game in program history. I got Penn State winning this one 21-20. I think is an absolute coin flip, though. I have no idea what's going to happen in that Orange Bowl.
Could come down to my guy at the end, my guy Mitch Jeter.
It could.
Staying hot in the playoffs. We'll see. It could be a game winner.
Absolutely. So you got Notre Dame going on to the national championship game. I've got Penn State going on to the national title game. Before we find out who's going to go on to face them between Texas and Ohio State, we got to talk about our sponsor of the show, and that is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does your child's future success look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can make it easier to achieve with the Kids Investment Account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. And then Fabric by Gerber Life is designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a Kids Investment Account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. It's all online, and setting up an account can take you just 5 minutes. Then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Unique gifting links can be shared with family and friends, so instead of more stuff, they can help grow your child's investments for their future instead. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFF college. That's meetfabric.com/PFF college. meetfabric.com/PFF college. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, Dawn. The next game we're talking about is the Cotton Bowl between number 5 Texas, number 8 Ohio State on Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. You have Quinn Ewers and the Texas passing game against the Ohio State pass defense. So what should we be looking out for when the Texas Longhorns are throwing the ball?
Does this count as a Quinn Ewers revenge game?
Kind of. I mean, he handed the ball off 2 times in his 1 year at Ohio State. So
and that's all they let him do.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely a revenge game for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Picking C.J. Stroud over him. How could they? All right. So the whole theme for me on both sides of this is going to be Ohio State and just their adaptability. Because when you have this much talent and then you have coaches that allow you to adapt into something new and make adjustments on the fly, you obviously got a really good thing going, right? So I'm going to talk about Jim Knowles and his coverage schemes, and this is something I teased during our Ohio State-Oregon review. You're seeing a difference in the coverages the last couple weeks. Obviously, you're playing against wide-open offenses like Tennessee and Oregon, and Texas isn't that much different. They get down and run the ball a little bit more with that offensive line, but I think the big thing that we're seeing lately, normally, Jim Knowles is his 3rd season now in Ohio State. Normally, you're in the Big Ten. You're playing a lot of single high, 1-3. You're stopping the run against most teams, pretty much against everybody except Oregon. Your first priority is to stop the run. Now, all of a sudden, he's balanced out these coverages, and he's playing cover 2 at the highest rate that he's played all season. Okay, 25.5% usage rate over the last 2 games. That's their most commonly used coverage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider for most of the year they used it maybe, I think, in the low teens or maybe even 10% of the time, and it's structured differently. Okay, so normally in the regular season, what you were getting was the classic Tampa 2 look. You'd have Downs in one half, you'd have Ransom in the other half, you'd have Cody Simon or Sonny Styles running up the seam, and it's like a classic Tampa 2 like Monty Kiffin used to run, right? Right now, they're mixing it up, and they're preventing teams from taking deep shots on them, and they're preventing them from getting into those RPO throws over the middle because of the way that they're structuring it. So Jordan Hancock, normally their slot corner. The last 2 games, he's played 79 snaps at free safety. What they're doing is having Hancock play one half, Ransom play the other half, and Downs is this rover sitting at about 10 to 12 yards down the middle of the field between these linebackers, And he's at this depth where he can basically do everything. He can run support from there without being blocked on the second level, because you're not going to get a guard or somebody up on him 10, 11, 12 yards down the field, right? So he's a free runner in the box as a run defender. And then he's essentially, he doesn't have to read and get back in cover in Tampa like a linebacker would. He can just stand there and basically figure out what he wants to do. That's essentially Caleb Downs' role at this point when they run this coverage is, hey, sit in the middle of the field at 12 yards, do whatever you want. Just do whatever you want, whatever you see, because he's got just a super high football IQ. He's a true sophomore. He's going to be a future, maybe top 10 pick. That's what we have with Caleb Downs. And what it's doing is disallowing deep shots. You don't want to throw anywhere near Caleb Downs. And it's helping in the run game. And your problem with Texas is when teams have committed to this and they feel like they can stop the run in too high looks, they haven't been great in against too high defenses this year. Against single high, they're the 5th best offense in the country. Against too high, they're 51st. And Quinn Ewers against cover 2 this season, not great. 55.8 passing grade, 3 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays, including, I think, at least 1 last week when he was trying to chuck it deep over it, and a 5.5-yard average depth of target. Just speaks to, okay, yeah, we've seen this in the NFL. It's gotten talked about so much. Teams going into cover 2 and so many too high coverages that they're making, great quarterbacks check it down. Same thing for Quinn Ewers. They're making him check it down, and if he's trying to throw into these tight windows, it's going to be tough, right? Occasionally, does he have the arm talent to make some of those throws? Sure, but it's also a gamble at times, especially when they haven't always had receivers this year who have separated vertically down the field, even though they have Isaiah Bond, and Matt Golden's done it lately, and that's going to be a big factor. But how much can Texas, if they get this look often, one, can they get into all those glance and slant throws in the RPO game with the linebackers playing a little bit wider and Caleb Downs just sitting right there waiting for him? I mean, right there at about 10 to 12 yards, just staring at the quarterback, just staring at him. I mean, Caleb Downs knows what he's doing back there. And then how often can they check it down and just keep kind of moving the chains, especially when you're talking about a run game that was great against Clemson. You're going to go over it. Was not great last week. And now you're playing Ohio State, who's got a raging hot run defense. You've got Sawyer, you've got Tuimoloau, you've got Tyleik Williams. Cody Simon's been fantastic all year. Lathan Ransom coming up and hitting Jordan James last week the way he did. I mean, that was just nuts. You've just got an Ohio State defense. We've talked about the offense a lot, and we're going to get there, but the defense is rolling too. Last week, Oregon, 20 carries for 33 yards. I mean, it's just I don't know what else to say about that other than they're just on fire right now. So they're going to have to figure out ways against this too high defense, either to run the ball or Quinn has to be very, very careful, especially with Caleb Downs roving the middle of the field.
Yeah, and honestly, to put the ball in Quinn Ewers' hands, you need to stop the run game first. And obviously, in that Clemson game, Quinn Ewers didn't have to do much in that game because of how dominant the run game was. He had to do a little bit more in the Arizona State game, and they almost lost that game. I'm really looking at Texas's outside zone-heavy scheme against a Buckeye defense that's elite at keeping contained this year. So you better be running on the outside, on the outside against Texas because they have just been running outside zone so much this year. Texas called outside zone on over 1/3 of their rushing attempts this year at 34%, 17th highest rate in the country. And outside zone, if you don't know, kind of designed to get the defense moving laterally, challenge the edge of the defense. And the running back's job is to find where it's kind of weakest on the defense, reading the edge defender and say, okay, if he's keeping it inside, I could bounce it outside. Or if he's setting the edge really well, I could bounce it back inside. That concept worked beautifully in Texas' first-round game against Clemson, which was a major reason why Texas won that game by multiple scores. But against Arizona State in the quarterfinal, it didn't work. And that's why I think a big reason why they squeaked by in double overtime in that game. Against Texas, they averaged .579 EPA per play in outside zone. Against Arizona State, negative .332. 249 rushing yards on outside zone against Clemson. 15 against Arizona State. 2 rushing touchdowns, 0 against Clemson, 0 against Arizona State. They averaged 10.8 yards per carry on outside zone against Clemson, 1.7 against Arizona State. And you may be wondering, okay, does Arizona State just play a lot better than Clemson? What happened there? They did. Another reason is Cameron Williams, their star right tackle, did not play in that Arizona State game, and he has been terrific this year on outside zone with an 84.5 run blocking grade. That's 14th among all tackles in the country. His backup, Trevor Gooseby, 251st in the country with a 52.1 run blocking grade on outside zone, 30 points lower than what Cameron Williams has done this year. Now, Williams did miss the Peach Bowl with a right knee sprain, but leading up to that game, he was at least a limited participant in practice. Maybe he could play in this game, and maybe he probably will play in this game, honestly. They'll probably need him, right? They'll probably need their projected first-round right tackle in this one against the Buckeyes' elite defense, especially considering how good Ohio State's been at containing outside zone this year. Ohio State leads the Power 4 with a 90.7 run defense grade against outside zone. They've only allowed 0.2 yards before contact on outside zone this year. Cody Simon, you mentioned before, he has been terrific this year. He is third among all linebackers in the country with an 89.9 run defense grade against outside zone. JT Tuimoloau leads all edge defenders in the country with an 86.4 run defense grade against outside zone. And Jack Sawyer is sixth in the country with an 82.4 run defense grade against outside zone. So you got two edges who are amazing at keeping contained this year. And then a linebacker in Cody Simon has done an amazing job at coming up and hitting the running backs as well. I can't wait to watch Kelvin Banks Jr., Cameron Williams, arguably the best tackle duo that we have in college football, against one of the best edge duos in college football, maybe the best, and JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer on these outside zone concepts, considering that's going to be a major factor in whether or not Texas is going to have anything going in their ground game.
I'll tell you what, it's why you love these playoff matchups. There's a non-zero chance that's 4 first-round picks.
Oh, yeah.
All in that matchup. And Williams, like every time I watch Cameron Williams, I just picture him in a 49ers uniform.
Yeah.
I do. I'd be like, that's perfect. Yeah, that'll be right next to Dominic Puni on that right side would be just nasty. But no, you're absolutely right. That's your matchup is Banks and Williams if he plays, or Gooseby if he doesn't, against Sawyer and Tuimoloau. And those were the two guys that I challenged last week. I go, listen, against Oregon the first time, you had your worst game of the season. They were really good in the second game. Obviously, it's tough to defend that team and all the spacing and everything they have. And Texas will be the same way. The difference is I think they're going to be less concerned than they were with Dylan Gabriel. Especially in the first game, it felt like they were trying to keep contained and really make sure Gabriel wasn't the option threat that he can be. Quinn Ewers really isn't an option threat. That's not how they run it. They're gonna run it from the pistol, and they're gonna just allow the handoff to happen, and they're just gonna keep contained. And the goal, as always, the goal in outside zone, as always, first is if you can turn the corner and get to the sideline, do it. Always get to the sideline if you can. But gonna be tough in this game. Oregon in the first game against Ohio State, with Ohio State playing so wide the way that they were. They shot right up and cut back into that B gap, and they got a lot of yards there, especially to Tuimoloau's side. That's the side I'm looking at, especially is Banks against Tuimoloau on that left side. That was the matchup that has given Ohio State issues, especially in the first Oregon game. He can make plays. Absolutely. There are times when he gets real aggressive. He makes some spectacular plays, but I think he's a little bit less consistent than Sawyer is. I think, especially if Williams is out, we already know, getting behind Kelvin Banks and running at JT, that's going to be a big, big key for Texas A&M, and then they can get some bootlegs and some play action going off of it.
Definitely. So you have the Ohio State run game that, Chip Kelly's notorious for his heavy zone schemes on, but I think you found something different that Ohio State's been doing lately.
This is fun. This was, of the 4 things I get to do today, this was the most fun.
Didn't you stay up until like 2 a.m. finding this, right?
I stayed up until a stupid late time the other night because there was a whole bit of sleuthing I had to do to get into why this happened. But first and foremost, okay, we're going into the playoff. We're Ohio State. We're embarrassed. We just lost to Michigan again. Everyone's teeing off on us. Ryan Day should be fired, blah, blah, blah. Everything's going on. The biggest problem that I think Chip Kelly saw was that, hey, we didn't run the football well in this game. And we've talked about for weeks on end their offensive line with the injuries just not being able to get it done. And if you're Chip Kelly is known as what? The inside zone guy. That's what he does. So he was with the Eagles, what he was with Oregon, UCLA, Ohio State, wherever he's been, that's what he's going to do. They're going to run inside zone. They want to run between the tackles, be physical, be up-tempo, wear the defense out. Can't do that with this team. You just can't. They're not running between the tackles. It's not how it's going to work with Ohio State. So I go back and watch their 2 playoff games. I go, okay, we ran the ball pretty darn well. What did we do? Did we just get better? Because that was my first thought watching the games relatively casually, like we were on the broadcast when they were happening live. I go, we're just blocking better. I mean, we know they've been emphasizing getting to the outside more so because our perimeter team now run and pass, right? And then I'm watching the tape back again, and I go, oh, this is completely different. Where all of a sudden Ohio State's gone from a Chip Kelly offense to we're going to run counter. We're going to get in some gap scheme, and we're going to run a boatload of counter. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh, that's where this is. Think about Travion Henderson's touchdown against Tennessee. Counter. Think about some of the play action schemes, like I think both Jeremiah Smith touchdowns against Oregon. Counter play action. They've gotten into this thing now where they go, okay, let's do something different. Let's throw them off. Let's throw just a total curveball. In the regular season, they ran counter 10% of the time. And it was really just kind of like, we'll just mix it up just to do it. These playoffs, they're running it on half their carries. 30 out of, I believe it's 30 out of 61. They're running counter. For reference, okay, 49, 50%. For reference, for the season, USC leads the nation running counter at 38%. They've just gone totally into, look at this, 76.9 rushing grade on these 30 carries. 7.3 yards per carry. Oof. 3 touchdowns, 6 explosive runs. Now you're talking about a 20% explosive rate. The only 2 teams for the season that had a 20% explosive run rate on design carries were Kansas State and UCF, which we know what those two can do. If you're getting 20%, you went from the way they were blocking up front and running for 73 design yards against Michigan to now we're ripping off 20% explosive runs, which is elite stuff. And I'm sitting here going, how did this happen? This doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. So I go, like you mentioned, I go down a rabbit hole till like 3 a.m. I go, what is this? Because this isn't Chip Kelly. It's not. I'm like, okay, who is it? Is it Justin Fry, their run game coordinator? I'm looking into like backgrounds and all sorts. Was it Will Howard? Did Chip Kelly go to Will Howard and go, hey, what'd you guys run at K-State? And then I was watching it again. And I was like, I don't know about that. And I think I'm doing some real detective work here. I think I have our source. Do you want to know the man responsible for this?
Tell me.
Mike Norvell.
How?
Mike Norvell, let's turn it all the way back to his Memphis days. Okay. Remember that staff? He had Dan Lanning.
Yep.
He had Kenny Dillingham. He had all sorts of big-time guys now on that staff at Memphis. We're going back to 2017. Well, another guy he had as an analyst so far down the totem pole on their coaching tree because he had just hired him out of a high school in the Memphis area. A man by the name of Carlos Lachlan. All right, so far down the totem pole at Memphis that if you go to their 2017 football, the coaching staff list, he's not even on there. Mm-hmm. He was an offensive analyst, and then he did some high school relations and recruiting stuff for a couple years. And Carlos Lachlan, he was there with Mike Norvell in his first year at Florida State after Lanning and Dillingham had left. Right, goes and he's an analyst. He's a high school recruiting guy. He gets an offer to be a running backs coach at Western Kentucky. Spends a year there. Then Lanning and Dillingham, they're at Oregon. Lanning calls Lachlan. He goes, hey, come with us. Come be our running back coach with us. I just got the Oregon job. Okay? Spends the last 2 years there. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was a pay raise or what. Now, Carlos Lachlan is the running back coach at Ohio State. Under Norvell, a coach who's extremely famous for running a whole boatload of counter schemes and building an entire layered offense. Think about last year with Jordan Travis and that Florida State offense, right? Boatload of counter. Think about Oregon the last couple years. Boatload of counter, right? Under Norvell, Lanning, Dillingham, Lachlan, all of that. When you look at across 2022 and 2023, right, those schools I just mentioned, Memphis, Florida State, Oregon, all right? Across the last 2 years, they were numbers 1, 3, and 4 in their rate of running counter. They're not running Chip Kelly's offense. This sounds crazy. They're running Mike Norvell's offense because I think Chip Kelly had a round table with the whole coaching staff and said, how the hell do we run the football? And I think Lachlan was the one that stepped up and said, let's try Norvell's stuff. Let's try all this stuff that we used to do at Oregon and Memphis and Florida State. That's what it is. If you watch this tape right now, this isn't Chip Kelly's offense. Chip Kelly is calling Mike Norvell's offense with Ohio State personnel. And this is where we've gotten to where on these counter plays with an objectively pretty bad offensive line right now because they're banged up. We're running for over 7 yards a clip, and we're looking like we're going to win a national title. That's where, and so anytime it always comes to my mind when teams make big changes. This isn't out of thin air. Chip Kelly didn't just go, yeah, screw it. After 40 years of coaching, I'm going to run counter this week. Yeah, that's not how that works. No, but when you have that's the advantage though. Yeah. When you do have 3 weeks to prepare. Conference title week, they were sitting there brewing hot because they just lost to Michigan. 2 more weeks against Tennessee to prepare. And what do you think Tennessee and Oregon are looking at when Tennessee's watching tape all year of Ohio State running the usual Chip Kelly stuff, and then they come out on 3 weeks rest, and they're coming out just running counter and running play-action schemes off counter and shit that no one's ever seen Ohio State do before. What do you think Tennessee, what do you think they were thinking on defense? They're like, oh, what do we even do with this?
Yeah.
And then Oregon has...
Yeah, they didn't prepare for that.
And
yeah.
they can't. It's not there. It's not even in. What are we going to do? Now Oregon's sitting at the Tennessee tape going, okay, that was game plan just for them, right? There's something about Tennessee. No, they come out and dominate the same way. And then with the passing schemes, too. You know the deep touchdown, which I have drawn up on the board behind you, to Jeremiah Smith last week, the one where he was like wide open, right, and made it 21-0? Even the passing schemes. Florida State, ironically, against Memphis, they ran that same exact play for like a 65-yard bomb against Memphis earlier in the year. Same formation, same play, same everything. It was DJU's longest completion of the year. They're just ripping plays out of Mike Norvell's playbook. And they're taking it and running it with Ohio State personnel. And now my problem for Texas, you know what would stress me out if I'm Texas and Pete Kwiatkowski, which he shouldn't be stressed out with all the talent he has on defense, but it's not the stuff that I've seen the last 2 weeks on tape, which is really good. It's all the layers of this offense I haven't seen. They put in a brand new offense. Like the whole thing starting with the run schemes. That would stress me out as I go, what is next? Because I'm telling you, I've written stuff on this, doing Florida State previews in the past, especially last year when they were really good, where I'm like, there's so many layers to this. And for as much as I love now, you have the part where, and you've got this, we love Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, right? Great players at Florida State. This is Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka. Mm-hmm. And now you're running the play-action schemes off it and the counter schemes with Henderson and Judkins, right, who may both get higher than where Trey Benson got drafted last year. I don't even know with Ohio State. They put in a brand new offense in 3 weeks. And it starts with these counter schemes up front, and they're just killing teams with it. It's literally – I could attribute this to Mike Norvell, and that makes no sense at all. But it does when you think – football's all about connections. And this is where we've gotten to with Ohio State, where Chip Kelly's calling Mike Norvell's offense, and playoff teams have to adjust on the fly to it.
Listen, Mike Norvell should have been coaching in a college football playoff semifinal last year, and I know he's kind of coaching his spirit right now in this college football playoff semifinal.
Well, look, Lanning, Dillingham, and now what I just explained with the Ohio State offense. He's got to be, if for the season Florida State has, Norvell's got to have some fun sitting back watching this.
Shout out Carlos Lachlan as well. I would just imagine you in your room, like Charlie Day from Always Sunny.
That's actually what I was going to bring that up. That's actually what it was, because there's always
going insane.
When you have this with coaching staffs, there's always a reason. For as great as Chip Kelly is, he's not some magician. He didn't come up with this out of thin air. I mean, he wasn't just going to be there was no way an ideal. I was like, there's always someone on your coaching, and great coaches do that. They're going to consult the rest of the staff, and they're going to sit at a table for hours on end. I've been there, and they're going to go, what do we do? What do we do? Because clearly you hit a point, and give him a lot of credit. Chip Kelly had to have gone in after the Michigan game and looked at their run game and just said, we just can't.
Yeah.
We just can't. We can't. We are not.
And our running backs are way too talented for us to be this bad.
And it's the exact reason I picked Tennessee to beat Ohio State at the time. As I look at that part, and I would say the same thing. I was like, they can't. They can't run the football the way they're running it right now. And in 3 weeks, they overhauled they're running Mike Norvell's offense, and they learned it in 3 weeks.
So just for all of our viewers out there who are, like, you keep talking about counter, like, what is counter? Like, what is it compared to, like, what they were running before?
Any scheme where you've got two backside pullers coming. It could be a guard and a tackle. Very often in today's game, it's a guard and a backside tight end. Just any scheme where you've got two pullers coming from the backside, because what it does is it actually makes life easier on the front side. And think about how much easier this makes a guy like Donovan Jackson's life at left tackle, who's usually a guard. When you're running zone, you have to make a lot of reads and decisions based on what's in front of you, based on, okay, I have to get this front side guy, and if he stunts inside me, then I have to go to the second level. It's like a whole 3-4 step process that goes into zone blocking, right? Which, if you get it down, then the rules feel very simplified, right? That's why Texas is so good at it, because you rep it over and over, and you get a million different looks, and every week you're just game planning fronts. When you're running schemes like counter, your front side guys especially, your job, if there's a guy inside, whip his ass. If there's nobody inside, go to the linebacker and whip his ass. That's simple. Down blocks are the easiest blocks in football, right? So at that point, then it becomes for the two pullers. First guy, you hit the first guy you see. Generally the edge guy, we're leaving him. Second guy, get up in the hole, hit the second guy we see. It's that simple. And if none of that works, the backs still have one or two cutback options, like we saw Henderson score on the touchdown against Tennessee. So there's different ways of simplifying it, but down blocks are always easier for offensive linemen. It's really like schemes like that in power. You would teach that. I've taught that to kids as young as 10 years old, because that's what they do. Coach, what's my job? Inside gap. Oh, okay, cool, got it. That's what it is at the college level. Nothing changes. Nothing about football changes as you get. It just gets a little bit more complex, but it keeps it simple for the offensive line, especially when they're repping it so much, and then they have so many looks off of it that just absolutely kill you.
I love that. That was a phenomenal breakdown, honestly, with the Ohio State run game. I'm laughing at myself thinking about you just at like 3 o'clock in the morning, just like searching up every single.
Actually, it was exactly the Charlie Day thing, because I was just like, this. It always comes from somewhere.
Yeah,
always.
I love it. All right, well, that was great. Another great matchup we have is the Ohio State receiving corps against the best secondary in the country. This is probably the most star-studded matchup of the entire season, honestly. Ohio State averaged .498 EPA per pass in their wins over Tennessee and Oregon. They averaged .273 the whole rest of the season. Something seems to have clicked for Ohio State in those two games, and that something is a 19-year-old phenom that they have in Jeremiah Smith. I didn't have to do too much research like you, Dalton, trying to find where this came from. No,
you had the easy part. Yeah.
This is a superstar.
So you get to do all the stuff that I just ranted about, and you have maybe one of the most talented receivers we've ever seen. That makes your life a lot easier.
That was a lot. Yeah. It was. You had to research, like, okay, where did this come from? That's where
you were done with this. You were done with this in 10 minutes.
Oh, that guy right there. That's him right there. The number one recruit in the 2024 class. Listen, he's been great all year. All right, there's no denying that. I know there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's just been Tennessee, Oregon." No. He has been outstanding all season long. However, he has become practically unguardable in these two playoff games against Tennessee and Oregon. 90.8 receiving grade. 13 catches for 290 yards and 4 touchdowns. Keep in mind, Tennessee and Oregon are 2 of the 30 best teams in the country in terms of coverage grade this year. Oregon's in the top 5, and he went off against Oregon in that Rose Bowl. You combine that with the fact that it's not just Jeremiah Smith. Like you mentioned, Emeka Egbuka is somehow the Robin in this offense. He's a projected first-round pick in the NFL draft. You have a receiving corps that pretty much every secondary in college football cannot handle. You can't handle the receiving corps, except maybe Texas. Except maybe Texas. Right now, the Longhorns lead the nation with a 92.5 coverage grade. 3 players in their secondary have 85-plus grades. 85-plus. We're talking like elite stuff. And they have 3 players in the secondary with 85-plus grades. Jahdae Barron, Andrew Makuba, and Michael Taft. Texas leads the FBS with a 59.8 passer rating allowed, and they're third in explosive pass rate allowed. Explosive passes are 15-plus yards. What Ohio State's been living off of lately. All those deep bombs to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Texas is the third best team in the country at limiting those at only 9% this year. Now, Texas, Jeremiah Smith said before the Oregon game, if you run man coverage on us, good luck. We're going to throw the ball, and we're going to beat you with it. Texas does not run man coverage that much. They only run man coverage 17% of the time. They play about 85 or so percent of the time in zone coverage. But the problem is, Jeremiah Smith is not just killing man coverage. He has 763 receiving yards against zone coverage this year. The only Power 4 receiver that has more receiving yards against zone coverage is Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter. That's it. It's Travis Hunter and then true freshman Jeremiah Smith in terms of how many receiving yards they have against zone coverage. And as a team, Ohio State is the third best receiving grade in America against zone coverage. Not only is this a must-see matchup considering how many freaking superstars are in this. Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, even Cardinal Tate's a very, very good pass catcher as well. Will Howard's been playing out of his mind lately. On the other side of the ball, you got Jahdae Barron, you got Michael Taft, you got Andrew Makuba, Malik Muhammad I like a lot as well. Studs everywhere. The pass rush for Texas will be huge in this game as well. Colin Simmons and guys like that. Not only is it just awesome to watch in terms of how many superstars there are, it could very well decide the game and who goes on to the national title game. Just how much can Texas limit what's look like an unstoppable receiving corps lead, but also Texas has by far, in my opinion, the best secondary in college football.
Yeah, no, and I think if they win this game, we are pretty much just going to declare them the best defense in college football. And you mentioned about preventing explosive plays against 10-plus yard targets this year, third in the nation in coverage grade behind Colorado and Minnesota. I mean, this is the company they're keeping, and it's a lot of, you mentioned it's zone heavy, it's a lot of 3 and 4 and switching back between them. And I'd be curious if they're looking to sit back even further, and how much do they trust Alfred Collins and those guys up front to stop the run? Maybe it's just a front 6, because you need all the help you can get. Right, I think there's 3 things that would worry me if I'm Texas on defense, aside from all the nonsense I ranted about earlier. It's can we support the run without the safeties? Can we leave especially Makuba on the back end to help in coverage, because he's usually the one flying up there making tackles. He's had such a great year. Can we support the run without the safeties? Can we prevent yards after catch? Because I think a lot of times against these zone defenses, and Ohio State, look, we saw Jeremiah Smith. He's able to take off on you after the catch, too. We saw it on the first touchdown where he takes a slide route and he just goes 50 yards like it's nothing and just striding it out to the goal line, right? And 3, against these zone looks is where we start to get a lot of the looks. Remember I've talked about lately in the season where Ohio State's lining up Smith and Ibuka on the same side of the formation? A lot of that is to just get zone defenders flying towards one or the other, and then the second guy is left wide open, right? And it's a whole there's a lot of problems that Texas has to deal with. And again, I think if they do win this game, we're going to sit here and go, okay, that's best defense in the country, because you just stopped that when it was raging hot and everything was working, and all the talent they have too. But I think those would be the 3 goals: stop the run, got to make open field tackles if Ohio State decides to go more conservative. And then just matching up somehow with these formations when they have Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith. I mean, it's hard enough that they're super talented. The fact that the formations help them out now too is just It's ridiculous. And what Chip Kelly's been doing lately in the passing game has just been brilliant. So it's a lot of problems. I think Texas, you might be right. They may be the last team that has a chance to do it. They might be the last. And I know these 2 defenses are really good, but this is the best coverage team in college football this year.
Absolutely. And a lot of people in the chat right now shouting out Donovan Jackson. I want to agree with him. He has been outstanding, especially in these last 2 playoff games for Ohio State. 78.7 pass blocking grade against Tennessee with that pass rush. And then Oregon, 81.7 pass blocking grade against, again, one of the best pass rushers in college football. So
his draft stock as a guard, I think, has gone way up because of his work at tackle. It sounds funny. He's not going to play tackle in the NFL, but he may actually work his way up, and if he wasn't already, to being the top guard taken in the draft.
And there's so many top elite guards in the NFL that you've seen, like in a pinch, play tackle. Like Zach Martin, I remember, did that.
Elijah Vera Tucker.
Exactly.
Guys like that. I mean, no, he's just a spectacular adjustment. And you get a little bit better with reps, but think about the 2 defenses he's done it against, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Just ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous edge rushers he's been going against, and against Texas. I know Colin Simmons plays a lot against the right tackle, so he probably won't be lining up against Donovan Jackson a lot, but that matchup, if he does get it, will be a terrific one as well. Ultimately, Dalton, who will win the Cotton Bowl and move on to the national championship game?
I think if I'm Texas and I'm going to win this game, and I know we've seen them be really good all year, and they squeaked it out last week for sure, they need to play front to back their best game. Yeah. And I think Quinn Ewers would have to play the best game of his career. I really do, with the way this Ohio State team is rolling. I've got Ohio State 31-24. I just think I need 60 minutes of Quinn Ewers' absolute best, and I need 60 minutes of their defense's absolute best. And I think we did see some breakdowns last week. Now, there was some trick plays and things involved, but against Arizona State, we got to remember, too, they gave up, 31 points in that game to Arizona State?
Yep.
And much of that was late, right? It was 22-6, I think it was, or 24-8. Sorry, it was 24. It was 24-8. This is an animal. Ohio State's an absolute animal right now, and I the way they're playing, you just can't feel comfortable picking against them. And I know Texas, again, their secondary may be the only one. They may be the only one left that can keep up with this the way that it's rolling. And unless they're so dominant in the trenches, especially their defensive line, if their defensive line comes out and dominates, and even with the counter schemes and the new stuff, if they don't let Ohio State's offensive line in the run game get rolling at 7 yards a clip like that, then you have something. Because I still think that's a big advantage they have when you talk about the talent is Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton and those guys up front. But the best parts and the biggest advantages for Texas, they're going to have to be absolutely perfect to win this game, and I just can't pick them to be perfect. Ohio State 31-24.
Yeah, I got Ohio State winning this one as well, 30-21. I think something snapped in Ohio State after that loss to Michigan, the way they've been playing these last two games. They finally look like, against Tennessee and Oregon, the best team in the country, like we thought they could be with their uber-talented roster going into the year. And I agree with you. They're going to need nearly flawless football from Quinn Ewers to win this game. And that's a dangerous, dangerous proposition to be asking for, considering how much of a roller coaster he's been this year. So I think Ohio State wins the Cotton Bowl and advances to their first national title game since 2020 when they lost to Alabama. Just to recap, I have Ohio State against Penn State in the national championship game. Taking a rematch. And you have Ohio State against Notre Dame in the national
Even that
game.
is a little bit of revenge of that. Remember last year, Marcus Freeman and 10 guys on the field, and the end of how that went? I mean,
and remember the coaching blunder for Marcus Freeman in that last year's game. Now he's coaching his ass off right now. I'm sure he wants another. He wants a do-over in that one.
Absolutely, it was as tight a game. It was as good a game as we watched all of last year. Yeah. Kyle McCord's biggest win last year.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, Miami.
Well, that was this year.
Too. Last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Listen, really fun semifinals. I didn't even mention at the top, maybe 4 of the most iconic helmets that we have in college football as well. I didn't even realize that.
Oh, these are going to be classics.
These are elite, like no logos on that one right there, and then 2 of the most iconic ones over here with Ohio State and Texas. But should be an iconic college football playoff semifinals as well, considering how massive these 4 programs are. Can't wait for them on Thursday and Friday. Our semifinal review show breaking down both these games will be on Saturday, January 11th. So next Saturday at 9 a.m. we'll be going live breaking down both of these semifinal games. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Appreciate our producers back there and Tyler and Eli. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys next Saturday for our college football playoff semifinal review show.